The moment I knew everything had changed was when I heard the collective gasp, standing at the altar in my grandmother's restored lace gown. I felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes shift from me to the empty space beside me. The space where Andrew should have been. "He was just here," whispered the best man, his face draining of color as he scanned the church. My bouquet of white roses trembled in my grip, petals falling to the marble floor like snow. The church's air conditioning raised goosebumps on my bare arms, and the scent of lilies, once romantic, now felt suffocating. The organist's notes faltered and died, leaving only the painful echo of whispers bouncing off stained glass. My maid of honor, Sophia, squeezed my arm. "Eliza, breathe." I couldn't. The weight of my dress, once ethereal, now felt like armor dragging me down. 6 months of planning, of dress fittings and cake tastings, of reassuring my divorced parents they could be in the same room without setting fire to each other. All of it evaporating in the silence of Andrew's absence. Father Mitchell cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should take a moment." His eyes held a pity that burned worse than anger would have. My father's voice cut through the murmurs. "What the hell is going on?" He stood, all 6'2" of him, his rented tuxedo tight across shoulders, more accustomed to flannel work shirts. My mother, 3 rows away and 15 years divorced, for once looked in complete agreement with him. Then I saw it. A folded note, placed on the altar steps where only the groom would have stood. With trembling fingers, I bent down, the cathedral-length veil pooling around me like spilled milk. "Eliza, I can't do this. I'm sorry. It's not you. I just can't." 7 words. 7 fucking words to end what should have been forever. The church erupted in chaos then. Sophia tried to shield me, but I could hear everything. The pity, the shock, the inevitable analysis that would dissect every moment of our relationship for clues I'd missed. Had he been sleeping with his assistant? Was he gay? Was there another woman? Or was I simply not enough? I dropped the note, watching it flutter back to the ground. Through a haze of unshed tears, I saw my reflection in the polished marble, a ghost bride, abandoned and frozen in time. "Everyone, please," Father Mitchell raised his hands. "Let's give the family some privacy." Privacy. As if 200 wedding guests could disappear on command, I turned, scanning the blur of faces for I don't know what. An explanation? A rescue? Andrew, returning to say it was all a cruel joke. "We need to get you out of here," Sophia whispered, her arm around my waist. And that's when I heard it. Not the sympathetic murmurs or my mother's controlled sobs, but the rumble. Low at first, like distant thunder, then growing until the stained glass windows vibrated in their frames. The church doors burst open, sending a shaft of blinding June sunlight across the aisle. "What now?" someone muttered. I squinted toward the light. A silhouette appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, flanked by 2 larger men. Not Andrew. Someone else. Someone who moved with the casual confidence of a predator. The congregation fell silent as the figure moved down the aisle with measured steps. I could make out details now, an impeccably tailored black suit that probably cost more than our entire wedding. Dark hair swept back from a face that seemed carved from stone, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow from within. "Who is that?" Sophia breathed beside me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because as the stranger's gaze locked with mine, something primal and terrifying unfurled in my chest. Recognition without knowing, fear without understanding why. "Miss Hart," he said, his voice quiet yet carrying to every corner of the church. His accent was subtle, Eastern European, maybe Russian. "I believe the ceremony has been interrupted." My father stepped forward. "Who the hell are you? This is a private event." The stranger didn't even glance at him. His focus remained entirely on me, as if we were alone in the cavernous space. "My name is Viktor Sokolov, and I'm here to offer the bride alternatives." The name hit me like cold water. Even in our small coastal town, everyone knew of Sokolov Enterprises, the mysterious corporation that had bought the abandoned shipyards and half the waterfront properties 3 years ago. Rumors swirled about their business dealings, about connections to the Russian Mafia, about the handsome but dangerous CEO who was rarely seen but constantly whispered about. "I don't understand," I managed, my voice a wisp of sound. Viktor Sokolov's mouth curved into something too predatory to be called a smile. Your fiancé has made a very serious mistake today, Miss Hart. One that has implications beyond this ceremony. Another man appeared at his side, leaning to whisper in his ear. Viktor nodded once, then returned his attention to me. We should continue this conversation elsewhere. The situation outside requires attention. What situation? My father demanded. As if in answer, a chorus of car horns sounded from outside. Guests near the windows gasped. The street is blocked, someone called out. There must be dozens of black SUVs. 300, to be exact, Viktor corrected casually. My associates are concerned for my safety when I venture out. My knees weakened, and Sophia tightened her grip on my waist. Eliza isn't going anywhere with you, she said, with more bravery than sense. Viktor's eyes flickered to her for the first time, assessing and dismissing her in the same moment. I'm afraid Miss Hart's fiancé has left her with little choice. His gaze returned to me, softening fractionally. He stole something that belongs to me. Something valuable. And then he ran, leaving you to face the consequences. The church was so silent I could hear the rustle of my dress as I straightened my spine. I don't know anything about any theft. I believe you. He took another step closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with undertones of leather, and something distinctly masculine. But that doesn't change the fact that Andrew Calloway has disappeared with property worth more than this entire town. Property I intend to recover. One of Viktor's men whispered something else, his expression urgent. Viktor nodded sharply. Police, the man said loud enough for me to hear. 5 minutes out. Viktor extended his hand to me, his expression suddenly grave. Miss Hart, I'm offering you protection. Your fiancé has angered dangerous people less reasonable than myself. Come with me now. Help me recover what he's taken, and I'll ensure your safety. This is insane, my father sputtered. Eliza, don't listen to this. He emptied your joint account 3 days ago. Viktor cut in, his eyes never leaving mine. He sold your apartment last week to a shell corporation. The honeymoon tickets to Bali were never purchased. His voice softened. He was planning this, Miss Hart. The only surprise was his timing. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. How could Viktor Sokolov know these things? And yet, something cold and certain in my gut told me he wasn't lying. Sir, one of his men pressed. We need to move. Viktor's hand remained extended. Miss Hart, Eliza, time is something we don't have. In that moment, with 200 guests watching, with my parents' opposing voices creating a storm of confusion, with Sophia clutching my arm, and the ghost of Andrew's betrayal hanging in the air, I made the decision that would change everything. I placed my hand in Viktor Sokolov's. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. Something electric passed between us, a current of danger, possibility, and fate. Wise choice, he murmured, pulling me gently toward him. To the church at large, he announced, the bride will be coming with me. The reception, unfortunately, is canceled. Eliza, my mother's voice shrill with panic. I'll be okay, I called back, though I had no idea if that was true. I'll call you. Viktor's arm encircled my waist, strong and possessive. My men will explain everything to the police, he said, guiding me toward a side door rather than back up the aisle. Your family will not be harmed. The implication that they could be harmed sent ice through my veins. Who are you really? I whispered, as we moved through the sacristy, my dress rustling against ancient wooden cabinets. His blue eyes met mine, and for a moment, I glimpsed something like regret in them. Someone who always collects what's owed to him, he said simply. Then he added, more softly, and someone who would never have left you standing alone at an altar. Outside, through a narrow door I'd never noticed before, a black Rolls-Royce waited, its engine purring. Viktor's hand at the small of my back guided me inside, the satin of my dress pooling around me in the spacious interior. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of what Viktor had meant. The street was a sea of black vehicles, SUVs, sedans, even armored cars, their drivers standing beside them, all wearing identical black suits and earpieces. A blockade of wealth and power and implicit threat. "Why are you doing this?" I asked as Victor settled beside me, his shoulder nearly touching mine. He studied me for a long moment, his face unreadable in the dim light. "Your fiancé stole $5 million and sensitive information from me. Information that could get many people killed." His jaw tightened. "But that's not why I'm here personally." "Then why?" His hand moved to cover mine, his touch unexpectedly gentle. "Because I've been watching you for 6 months, Eliza Hart, ever since Andrew Calloway entered my organization and put you at risk." His gaze traveled over my face with an intensity that made my skin flush. "And I've decided that while I must recover what he stole, I find I want to keep what he abandoned." The car accelerated smoothly away from the church, from the life I'd planned, from everything I'd ever known, and as the town blurred outside the tinted windows, I realized I was moving toward something I couldn't begin to understand. Something dangerous, forbidden, and strangely inevitable. I had become collateral in a game I didn't know existed, property transferred from one man to another. Only this time, the man who claimed me had no intention of letting me go. The Rolls-Royce glided through streets I'd known my entire life, yet everything looked different now. Sharper, more vivid, as if my senses were compensating for the unreality of my situation. My wedding dress spilled across the leather seat between Victor and me, a pool of white against the black interior. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Victor's eyes met mine briefly before returning to the passing scenery. "Somewhere safe. My residence on the Bluffs. The Bluffs." Everyone in town knew about the massive estate that had been constructed on the coastal cliffs 3 years ago. A modern fortress of glass and stone, surrounded by walls and security systems. No one from town had ever been inside, though rumors circulated about helicopter pads and underground tunnels. And then what? I clutched my bouquet, now wilted and shedding petals onto the pristine floor. "You keep me prisoner until Andrew returns with whatever he took." Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. "You are not a prisoner, Eliza. You are under my protection." His hand came to rest on the seat between us, close enough that I could feel its warmth but not touching me. "As for Andrew, I have men tracking him. It's only a matter of time." The casual way he spoke of men tracking my runaway groom sent a chill through me. "And when they find him?" Victor's expression hardened. "That depends entirely on him, and on the condition of what he's taken." I turned to look out the window, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. The coastal highway stretched before us, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road. In another life, the one I'd planned until an hour ago, I would be having my first dance with my husband right now, champagne flowing, surrounded by well-wishers. Instead, I was being whisked away by a man who radiated danger, a man who commanded an army of black vehicles and stone-faced guards, a man who spoke of my fiancé as if he were already dead. "You're thinking about what should have been happening now," Victor said quietly, reading my thoughts with unnerving accuracy. "The reception. The celebration." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "He never deserved you." The words were spoken with such conviction that I turned to look at him. Victor's profile was sharp against the dying light. Strong jaw, straight nose, dark brows drawn together in what appeared to be genuine anger. A man who runs when faced with commitment is not a man at all. "You don't know anything about us," I whispered. Victor's laugh was soft and without humor. "I know everything about you, Eliza Marie Hart, born at Memorial Hospital 28 years ago, valedictorian at Lincoln High, full scholarship to state for English literature. Returned home to teach at your old high school after your father's heart attack 4 years ago." His eyes held mine, unblinking. "I know you volunteer at the animal shelter every other Saturday. I know you take your coffee with almond milk because regular dairy gives you migraines. I know you sleep with your window open even in winter." My blood turned to ice. "How?" "The moment Andrew Calloway entered my organization, I had you investigated. It's standard procedure for anyone connected to my employees." His voice softened fractionally. "At first, it was merely precautionary. Then it became personal interest." The implication hung in the air between us. This man had been watching me, learning intimate details of my life, while I remained completely unaware of his existence beyond local rumors. "That's stalking," I said, anger finally breaking through my shock. "That's protection," he countered, unfazed, "and wisdom." The man you trusted was embezzling funds and selling information that could get people killed. His fingers drummed once on the leather seat. "Including you. Had others discovered his activities before I did?" The car slowed as we approached an unmarked turnoff from the coastal road. Massive iron gates appeared, swinging open silently as we approached. 2 armed guards nodded respectfully as our car passed. "Welcome to Sokolov Estate," Victor said as the house came into view. Estate was an understatement. The structure before us was a modernist masterpiece, cantilevered glass and steel emerging from the cliffside as if it had grown there naturally. Multiple levels cascaded down toward the ocean, each with expansive terraces. The grounds were immaculate, with sculptures placed strategically among gardens that somehow appeared both wild and precisely maintained. The car stopped at a covered entrance where 3 staff members waited. A woman in a tailored gray dress, and 2 men in dark suits, less imposing than Victor's security detail, but clearly part of his household. "This is Marina, my housekeeper," Victor said, as the driver opened his door. "She will help you get settled." Before I could protest that I had no intention of getting settled, Victor was out of the car and extending his hand to me. I hesitated, then placed my fingers in his. His grip was warm and secure as he helped me from the car, my wedding dress cascading around me in a cruel reminder of the day's events. Marina stepped forward, her expression professional but kind. "Miss Hart, I've prepared a suite for you. You must be exhausted." I was bone-deep, soul-weary exhaustion that made even standing difficult, yet adrenaline kept me upright, kept my voice steady. "I need to call my family. They must be worried sick." Victor nodded. "Of course. Marina will show you to your rooms and provide you with anything you need." His gaze softened as it swept over me. "Rest. Change. We'll talk over dinner." "I'm not having dinner with you," I said, suddenly desperate to assert some control over this spiraling situation. "I want to go home." His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. A subtle reminder of the power he wielded. "Your apartment was sold, Eliza. And your fiancé has made powerful enemies who now know your name and face." His voice lowered. "This is the safest place for you until the situation is resolved." Before I could argue further, he turned to Marina. "Make sure Miss Hart has everything she needs. Dinner at 8. With that, he strode into the house, phone already at his ear, issuing commands in rapid-fire Russian. Marina touched my elbow gently. "This way, miss." I followed her through vast, open spaces of marble and glass, past art pieces that belonged in museums, beneath skylights that captured the fading afternoon sun. Despite my situation, I couldn't help but notice the beauty of the place. It was like walking through the pages of an architectural magazine. "Here we are," Marina said, opening double doors to reveal a suite larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Pacific, now painted gold and crimson by the setting sun. The furnishings were elegant but comfortable. A sitting area with plush couches, a desk with a laptop, and through another doorway, a bedroom with what had to be a king-sized bed. "The bathroom is through there," Marina indicated another door. "I've laid out some clothes that should fit you. And here," she handed me a new phone. "Mr. Sokolov asked that you use this. Your family's numbers have been programmed in." I took the phone, noting it was the latest model, still in its box. "Am I being monitored?" Marina's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Sokolov values privacy. The phone is secure but not monitored." She hesitated. "He is not what the rumors say, Miss Hart." "And what do the rumors say?" "That he is cruel, cold, dangerous." She straightened a vase of fresh flowers on a side table. "He is dangerous, yes, but only to those who betray him. To those under his protection, he is generous." I sank onto the edge of a chair, the weight of my wedding dress suddenly unbearable. "I don't want his protection or his generosity. I want my life back." Marina's eyes held unexpected compassion. "The life you had was built on lies, miss. Mr. Sokolov has resources to help you build a new one. She moved toward the door. Ring if you need anything. The bathroom has everything for a bath if you wish. Left alone, I finally allowed the tears to come, hot and relentless. I cried for the humiliation, for the betrayal, for the life I'd planned that had evaporated in an instant. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. When I could cry no more, I forced myself to stand. In the massive bathroom, all marble and glass with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My carefully applied makeup had left dark trails down my cheeks. My updo had collapsed, sending tendrils of hair around my face. The wedding dress, once perfect, now looked like a costume, something from another woman's life. With trembling fingers, I began to undo the tiny pearl buttons down my spine. It took nearly 15 minutes, but finally the dress slipped from my shoulders, pooling around my feet like surrendered dreams. I stepped out of it, leaving it in a heap on the floor, and turned on the shower. Under the scalding spray, I scrubbed away the day, the makeup, the hairspray, the scent of church lilies, the lingering touch of Andrew's kiss on my cheek, before he disappeared to check something and never returned. When I emerged, skin pink and raw, I found clothes laid out on the bed, soft loungewear in pale blue that fit perfectly, as Victor had promised. I picked up the secure phone and called my mother. "Eliza." Her voice was thick with tears. "Are you all right? Where are you?" "The police are here and they're saying..." "I'm safe," I cut in. "I'm at Sokolov's house on the bluffs. He says Andrew stole from him, that he was planning to leave me all along." "Oh, sweetheart," my mother's voice broke. "The police found evidence. Your accounts are empty, and the apartment. So it was true." The betrayal cut fresh again. "Mom, I need time to figure this out. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." After reassuring both my parents that I wasn't being held against my will, a half-truth at best, I hung up and moved to the windows. Night had fallen, and the ocean was a vast darkness beyond the glass, broken only by the silver path of moonlight on the water. A soft knock at the door startled me. Marina stood there with a silver tray. "Mr. Sokolov thought you might prefer to eat here tonight," she said, placing the tray on a small table. "He understands you've had a difficult day." The unexpected consideration caught me off guard. "Thank him for me," I said, suddenly ravenous despite everything. After Marina left, I lifted the silver dome to find a perfect meal: roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread, and a glass of white wine. As I ate, I noticed a folded note beside the plate. "Eliza, rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk about Andrew, about what he took, and about your future. Know that you are safe here. No one enters these grounds without my permission, and no one will harm you while you're under my protection. If you need anything at all, just ask. Victor." His handwriting was strong and precise, like everything else about him. I traced the letters with my fingertip, trying to understand the man who had upended my life within the space of hours. Was he my captor or my savior? A dangerous criminal or a businessman protecting his interests? And why did he look at me with that intensity, as if he'd been waiting for me long before Andrew entered his organization? After dinner, exhaustion claimed me. I crawled into the massive bed, sinking into sheets that probably cost more than a month of my teacher's salary. Through the windows, I could see stars scattered across the sky and the distant lights of boats on the water. I should have been married by now, should have been in Andrew's arms, not alone in the house of a man who might be a mobster. Yet as sleep pulled me under, a treacherous thought emerged. Victor Sokolov had shown more concern for my well-being in a few hours than Andrew had in our entire final month together. When I dreamed, it wasn't of Andrew's betrayal or the humiliation at the church. Instead, I dreamed of intense blue eyes watching me from the shadows, of strong hands reaching for mine, of a voice that promised both danger and protection in the same breath. I woke gasping in the pre-dawn light, sheets tangled around my legs, the phantom sensation of Victor's touch still lingering on my skin. Morning light streamed through the wall of windows, painting golden paths across the polished floor. For a blissful moment I existed in the limbo between sleep and wakefulness, free from memory or consequence. Then reality crashed back, The abandoned wedding, Andrew's betrayal, Viktor Sokolov and his world of dark power that had somehow engulfed me. I sat up, running my fingers through tangled hair. The clock beside the bed read 8:17. In another life, I'd be waking up in Bali now, in a honeymoon suite with... No, I wouldn't torture myself with those thoughts. A soft knock interrupted my spiral. "Miss Hart?" Marina's voice. "May I come in?" "Yes," I called, pulling the sheets higher though I was fully dressed in the borrowed loungewear. Marina entered carrying a tray with coffee and what smelled like fresh pastries. She placed it on the bedside table, then moved to open the curtains fully, revealing a breathtaking view of the Pacific stretching to the horizon. "Mr. Sokolov asked me to inform you that he's in meetings until noon," she said, pouring coffee into a delicate porcelain cup. "He hopes you'll join him for lunch on the lower terrace at 1 o'clock. I accepted the coffee, grateful for its warmth and normalcy. "Am I allowed to leave my room?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Marina's expression softened. "Of course, Miss Hart. You're a guest, not a prisoner." She gestured toward a closet I hadn't noticed the night before. "I've taken the liberty of providing some clothes that should fit you. Your wedding dress has been properly stored." I flinched at the mention of the dress. "Thank you. The house and grounds are at your disposal, though I would recommend staying within the security perimeter." Marina moved toward the door. "If you need anything, just press 0 on any house phone. The pool is heated, if you'd like to swim, and the library is on the main floor, East Wing." After she left, I sipped my coffee and nibbled at a flaky chocolate croissant, wondering how Marina, or Viktor, knew I had a weakness for them. The thought of being so thoroughly investigated made my skin crawl. Yet the small consideration touched something in me nonetheless. I showered again, scrubbing away the remnants of dried tears, then explored the closet Marina had mentioned. It contained an assortment of casual but expensive-looking clothes. Jeans, sweaters, blouses, all in my size. The fact that Viktor had prepared for my arrival, perhaps even before Andrew's betrayal, sent a fresh wave of unease through me. I selected jeans and a soft cream sweater, then slipped on a pair of leather ankle boots that fit perfectly. My engagement ring caught the light as I dressed, the 3-carat diamond suddenly seeming like a prop from a play I'd been performing without knowing the script. I twisted it off and placed it on the nightstand, my finger feeling strangely naked without its weight. Venturing from my suite, I wandered through corridors adorned with what appeared to be original artwork. A Monet here, what looked suspiciously like a Picasso there. The house was quiet except for the occasional staff member who nodded respectfully as I passed. No sign of Viktor or his security detail. I found the library Marina had mentioned. A 2-story room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather chairs that invited hours of reading. Running my fingers along spines that included everything from Russian classics to modern bestsellers, I selected a thriller I'd been meaning to read and curled up in a chair by the window, but the fictional suspense couldn't compete with the reality of my situation. After reading the same paragraph 5 times, I gave up and returned the book to its shelf. The house seemed to go on forever, each room more impressive than the last. A music room with a grand piano, a home theater that would put commercial cinemas to shame, a gym with equipment I couldn't begin to name. Yet for all its luxury, the place felt empty, impersonal, like a stage set waiting for life to happen within it. Eventually, I found my way outside to a series of terraced gardens that cascaded down the cliffside. The air was crisp with salt and cypress, the sun warm on my face despite the October chill. In the distance, I could see the faint outlines of boats on the horizon. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around to find Viktor standing a few feet away. In daylight, he was even more striking, tall and broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His dark hair was swept back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his cheekbones and jaw. But it was his eyes that held me, blue as the deepest part of the ocean, watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I didn't hear you approach," I said, hating how breathy my voice sounded. "Old habit." He moved to stand beside me at the stone balustrade, looking out over the water. "I trust you slept well?" "As well as could be expected after being abandoned at the altar and kidnapped by a suspected criminal," I replied, finding my spine. Viktor's lips curved slightly. "Not kidnapped, Eliza. Protected." "Is there a difference?" "Significant." He turned to face me fully. You are free to leave whenever you wish. I simply wouldn't recommend it until we've resolved the situation with Andrew. I crossed my arms over my chest. And what exactly is that situation? You've been vague about what he supposedly stole. Victor was silent for a long moment, studying me as if deciding how much to reveal. Money, yes. 5 million from accounts he managed. But more importantly, information. The kind that could start a war between organizations if it fell into the wrong hands. Organizations, I repeated flatly. You mean criminal syndicates. You're talking about the Mafia. I'm talking about business interests that sometimes operate adjacent to traditional legal structures. His expression remained impassive. My family has holdings in shipping, real estate, energy, technology. Some aspects require discretion. You're a criminal, I said, needing to name the elephant on the terrace. Victor's smile was cold. I'm a businessman who understands that power doesn't always follow the neat lines drawn by governments. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and distinctly masculine. The world isn't black and white, Eliza. You of all people should understand that now. The truth in his words stung. I'd believed in a simple narrative. Meet a nice man, fall in love, get married, live happily ever after. Now I stood on the edge of a cliff, literally and figuratively, with a man who existed in shades of gray I couldn't begin to comprehend. How did Andrew get involved with you? I asked. He approached us, actually, claimed to have skills in financial management that could benefit our operations. Victor's jaw tightened. He was convincing, charming. I gave him access to secondary accounts as a test. When he proved reliable, his responsibilities expanded. And then he stole from you. Victor nodded. 3 days ago, the accounts were emptied. Key files were copied. By the time my security team discovered the breach, Andrew had covered his tracks well. His eyes held mine, but not well enough to hide his plans to leave you. I turned away, blinking back fresh tears. Why tell me this? Why bring me here instead of just doing whatever it is men like you do to people who betray you? Victor's hand came to rest beside mine on the stone balustrade, not touching, but close enough that I could feel its warmth. Because you're innocent in this, because leaving you to face humiliation and potential danger from Andrew's other creditors would be unconscionable. How chivalrous, I said bitterly. No. His voice deepened. Chivalry is a luxury for men who don't live with constant threats. This is something else. He paused. When Andrew first mentioned his fiancée, I had you investigated as a matter of routine. What I found interested me. A chill ran down my spine despite the sunshine. Interested you how? You live simply but with dignity. You care for your community, your students, the shelter animals, your aging father. You're intelligent, compassionate, loyal. His fingers inched closer to mine on the stone. You deserved better than a man who saw you as a convenient cover for his activities. The conversation was veering into territory that made my pulse quicken. You don't know me, I insisted. I know enough to recognize what Andrew failed to value. Victor's gaze was so intense I had to look away. Lunch is ready, he said suddenly, gesturing toward a lower terrace where a table had been set for 2. Shall we? I followed him down stone steps lined with lavender and rosemary, their scent rising in the warming air. The table overlooked the ocean, a white cloth rippling gently in the breeze. A bottle of wine was already open, breathing in the sunshine. Victor held my chair, an old-world courtesy that seemed both out of place and perfectly in character. As I sat, a server appeared with a first course of chilled soup, then disappeared just as silently. You have questions, Victor said, lifting his wineglass. Ask them. I took a sip of my own wine, crisp and perfectly chilled, before meeting his gaze. How long were you watching me before yesterday? 6 months, since Andrew joined the organization. And you never thought to warn me? To tell me he was involved with whatever this is? Victor's expression tightened. At first, it was merely professional interest. Then, as I learned more about you, I found myself reluctant to disrupt your life. He set his glass down carefully. I convinced myself Andrew was compartmentalizing, keeping his work with us separate from his relationship with you, but that wasn't true. No. 2 months ago, one of my security team reported seeing Andrew with another woman in Seattle. I had him followed more closely after that. Victor's eyes darkened. He was planning his exit strategy. Draining accounts slowly, creating false trails, setting up shell companies, using your wedding as the perfect distraction for his final move. The soup turned sour in my mouth. So, yesterday at the church, I'd received word that the accounts had been emptied, that Andrew was planning to run immediately after the ceremony. Victor's fingers tightened around his wine stem. I arrived intending to stop the wedding, to spare you being bound to a man who would disappear with your honeymoon money before the reception ended. But he beat you to it. Victor inclined his head. He must have been tipped off about my movement in the area. It was unexpected. The server returned, clearing our soup bowls and replacing them with a delicate salad of greens, fruit, and nuts. We ate in silence for a few moments, the only sounds the distant crash of waves and the call of seagulls. What happens now? I finally asked. Your men find Andrew, recover whatever he took, and then what? What happens to me? Victor studied me over the rim of his glass. That depends on what you want, Eliza. I want my life back, I said automatically. The life with a man who betrayed you? Who emptied your accounts and sold your home without your knowledge? His voice was gentle despite the harsh words. That life is gone, but I can offer you alternatives. There it was again. That word he'd used in the church. What alternatives? Financial security, for one. Compensation for what Andrew took from you. Victor leaned forward slightly. I have connections across the country. Across the world. Whatever you wish to do. Continue teaching. Return to university for an advanced degree. Travel. I can facilitate. Why would you do that? What's in it for you? Something flashed in his eyes, something possessive and hungry that made my heart race. Let's just say I believe in balancing scales. Andrew took from both of us. I'd like to recover what's mine and ensure you recover what's yours. My freedom isn't negotiable, I said firmly. It was never in question, Victor signaled, and the server appeared with our main course. Perfectly seared fish with seasonal vegetables. You are not a prisoner here, Eliza. Though I would advise against leaving until we've confirmed Andrew hasn't made arrangements to involve you further in his schemes. We ate in silence for a while, the food exquisite despite my churning emotions. Victor moved with the easy grace of a predator at rest, confident, controlled, aware of everything around him. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, his gaze almost tender. Tell me about your work, he said suddenly. Your students. What drew you to teaching? The question was so normal, so divorced from our bizarre circumstances, that I found myself answering honestly. We spent the next half hour in surprisingly easy conversation about my classroom experiences. The challenges of engaging teenagers with classic literature. The rewards of seeing a reluctant reader connect with a book for the first time. Victor listened with genuine interest, asking insightful questions that revealed an educated mind behind the dangerous exterior. By the time dessert arrived, a light lemon tart that melted on my tongue, I'd almost forgotten the circumstances that had brought me to this terrace. Almost. As if reading my thoughts, Victor's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening into something cold and unfamiliar. Excuse me, he said, standing. I need to take this. He moved a few paces away, speaking rapid Russian into the phone. Though I couldn't understand the words, the tone needed no translation. Something had happened. Something that angered him deeply. When he returned to the table, the charming lunch companion had vanished, replaced by the dangerous man I'd glimpsed in the church. What is it? I asked. They found Andrew. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. In Vancouver, attempting to make contact with a rival organization. My heart stuttered. Is he alive? For now. Victor's eyes met mine, glacial and remote, but he's made his situation significantly worse by attempting to sell information about my operations to the Draken Syndicate. What will happen to him? Victor studied me, as if gauging how much truth I could handle. That depends partly on you. Me? How? If you help me understand what he might have told you, what plans he might have mentioned, what names he might have dropped in conversation. It could mitigate his actions. The implication was clear. I could help determine whether Andrew lived or died. The power was sickening. "I don't know anything about your business," I said honestly. Andrew never talked about work beyond vague references to investments and client meetings. Victor nodded slowly. "I believe you. But there may be things he said that seemed innocent at the time, locations, names, dates, that could help us trace his movements and recover what was taken. So I'm still useful to you," I said bitterly. His expression softened fractionally. "You were never merely useful, Eliza." He stood, extending his hand to me. "Come. There's something I want to show you." Against my better judgment, I placed my hand in his and allowed him to lead me down another set of stone stairs, deeper into the terraced gardens. We stopped at a secluded viewpoint where the cliff dropped away to reveal the coastline stretching north and south, the town just visible in the distance. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Victor said, still holding my hand. "Yes," I admitted, the vista momentarily distracting me from my situation. "I came to this town 3 years ago to establish a West Coast base of operations," he said quietly. "I chose it for its natural harbor, its strategic location, and its obscurity. No one would look for Viktor Sokolov in a sleepy coastal town. Until Andrew put it on the map for your enemies, I guessed." Victor nodded grimly, and now decisions must be made. About the town. About my operations here. He turned to face me, still holding my hand in his. "And about you, Eliza Hart. What decisions?" I asked, my voice catching as Victor's thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand. His eyes held mine, searching. Whether to abandon this location entirely. Whether Andrew's betrayal has compromised everything I've built here. His grip tightened slightly. Whether you could ever look at me as something other than the man who disrupted your wedding. The intensity of his gaze made me look away first, out toward the endless blue horizon. "I hardly know you. You know more than you think," Victor said softly. "You know I protect what's mine. You know I value loyalty above all else. You know I see something in you that drew me to that church yesterday, beyond merely business concerns." A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. "And what exactly do you see?" Victor reached up, his fingers hovering near my face without touching, as if he wanted to brush back a strand of hair, but was restraining himself. "Strength. Resilience. Beauty, yes, but more than that. A soul that doesn't belong with a man who would abandon you at the first sign of trouble." His words stirred something dangerous in me, a flicker of warmth in the cold emptiness Andrew had left behind. I stepped back, needing distance from Victor's magnetic pull. "My fiancé just left me at the altar," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "I'm not exactly in the market for whatever you're implying." Victor smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. "I'm not proposing, Eliza, not yet." The casual "not yet" hung in the air between us, loaded with implications that made my heart race. Before I could formulate a response, his phone rang again. This time, Victor answered in English. "Sokolov." He listened, his expression darkening. "When? How many?" "Secure the perimeter. No one enters or leaves. I'm on my way." He ended the call, already moving toward the house. "Come, quickly. What's happening?" I hurried to keep pace with his long strides. "Complications." Victor guided me up the stairs with a hand at the small of my back, gentle but insistent. "We need to get inside." The relaxed atmosphere of our lunch had evaporated, replaced by a tension that crackled in the air. As we entered through a glass door, Victor's security detail materialized, 4 men in dark suits, all with the unmistakable bulge of weapons beneath their jackets. "Sir," one of them said, "the helicopter is ready." Victor nodded sharply. "Take Ms. Hart to her suite. Standard security protocol. No one enters without my direct authorization." "Wait," I protested, as 2 men flanked me. "What's going on?" Victor's face softened as he looked at me. Andrew talked. "The Draken Syndicate has sent people. They believe I'm vulnerable because of the breach." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Stay in your room. You'll be safe there. But what about—" "I'll handle it." He brushed his knuckles against my cheek in a touch so fleeting I might have imagined it. "Trust me, Eliza." Then he was gone, striding down the corridor with the remaining security detail, issuing orders in rapid Russian. The two men escorted me to my suite, taking positions outside the door after I entered. Through the windows, I heard the distant thrum of helicopter blades. Then silence. I paced the room, trying to make sense of what was happening. Rival syndicates, security protocols, men with guns. This was so far removed from my quiet life of lesson plans and literature discussions that it felt like a fever dream. Hours passed. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. I tried reading, then gave up. Tried watching the massive television that rose from a cabinet at the foot of the bed, but couldn't focus on anything. As darkness fell, Marina appeared with dinner on a tray. "Mr. Sokolov asked me to make sure you eat," she said, placing it on the small table by the window. "Where is he?" I asked, unable to keep the concern from my voice. Marina's expression revealed nothing. "Attending to business matters. He asked me to tell you he'll see you in the morning." After she left, I picked at the meal, some kind of delicate pasta with seafood that would normally have delighted me. Now it tasted like ashes in my mouth. I couldn't understand my own anxiety. Why should I care about Viktor Sokolov's safety? He was a criminal, a man who lived by his own rules, who had upended my life in the space of a day, and yet he had shown me more consideration in 24 hours than Andrew had in our final months together. He looked at me as if I were something precious, something to be protected at all costs. I moved to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Somewhere out there, decisions were being made, perhaps lives ended, all because of information Andrew had stolen. Information he might have hidden in our apartment, might have mentioned in passing while I listened, without understanding the significance. A soft knock at the door startled me. One of the security guards entered, his expression grave. "Miss Hart, please come with me. Mr. Sokolov requests your presence." "Is he back?" I asked, already moving toward the door. "Yes, ma'am. This way." The guard led me through corridors I hadn't seen before, deeper into the house until we reached a heavy wooden door. He knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. The room beyond was clearly Victor's study. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, a massive desk positioned to view both the door and the windows overlooking the ocean. Victor stood with his back to me, silhouetted against the glass, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "Thank you, Dmitri. That will be all." Victor didn't turn as the guard withdrew, closing the door behind him. I remained near the entrance, suddenly uncertain. Something had changed. The energy in the room was different, charged with an emotion I couldn't identify. "Is everything all right?" I asked when the silence stretched too long. Victor turned then, and I gasped. A cut sliced across his cheekbone, already darkening into a bruise. His knuckles were raw and red where they gripped the glass. "You're hurt," I said, taking an instinctive step toward him. "It's nothing." He took a long swallow of his drink, whiskey, from the smell that reached me. A disagreement that became physical. I moved closer, unable to stop myself. "What happened?" Victor set down his glass and crossed to a cabinet, withdrawing a first aid kit. The Dracon Syndicate sent representatives to discuss Andrew's offerings. The discussions did not go as they planned. The clinical way he described what had clearly been a violent confrontation chilled me. Are they dead?" Victor supplied, his smile grim as he extracted an antiseptic wipe. "No. Not all of them, at least. Death creates more problems than it solves in most business situations." I flinched at his casual reference to killing, a reminder of exactly who and what he was. Yet when he winced, trying to clean the cut on his face with his injured hand, I found myself moving forward. "Let me," I said, taking the wipe from him. Victor went still, his eyes locked on mine as I stepped into his personal space. He was taller than I'd realized. I had to stretch slightly to reach his cheek. The antiseptic made him hiss between his teeth, but he didn't move as I gently cleaned the wound. "It's not deep," I murmured, focusing on the task rather than our proximity, rather than the heat radiating from his body. But it might leave a scar. Another one? He said with a hint of dark humor to match the collection. Only then did I notice the thin white line along his jaw, another at his temple disappearing into his hairline. Scars from a life I couldn't begin to imagine. "Why did you send for me?" I asked, stepping back once the cut was clean. Victor studied me for a long moment. "Because I need to know if you recognize these names." He moved to his desk, picking up a piece of paper. "Mikhail Petrov? Sergei Volkov? Elena Markova. Did Andrew ever mention any of them?" I shook my head. "No, never." "What about locations? Did he ever mention Seattle, Vancouver? A place called the Hermitage?" "He went to Seattle sometimes for work," I said slowly, trying to remember details I'd paid little attention to at the time. "And he mentioned a client dinner at a restaurant called the Hermitage about 2 months ago." Victor's expression sharpened. "Did he say who he met there?" I closed my eyes, trying to recall. He said it was a potential investor. A woman. He said she was interested in expanding operations along the coast. Elena, Victor muttered, almost to himself. The connection goes back further than we thought. I sank into a leather chair, suddenly exhausted. "I don't understand any of this. Why would Andrew risk stealing from you? Why try to sell your information?" Victor returned to the window, his profile sharp against the night sky. Greed, ambition, the belief that he was smarter than everyone else. He turned to face me. The Draken Syndicate offered him protection and a new identity in exchange for information about my operations. A fresh start. Without me. I added bitterly, "Yes." Victor's voice softened. That was his mistake. Leaving you behind, unprotected, for my people to find. If he'd taken you with him, he trailed off, his expression darkening. What would have happened if he had? Victor's eyes met mine, cold and dangerous. I would have found you both, but the outcome would have been different. A shiver ran down my spine. You would have killed him. Without hesitation. Victor took a step toward me, then another, until he stood directly before my chair. But you would have been safe. Always. The intensity of his gaze made it hard to breathe. Why? Why does it matter to you what happens to me? I'm nothing to you, just the woman foolish enough to nearly marry a thief. Victor knelt before me, bringing us to eye level, his hands coming to rest on the arms of my chair. You are not nothing, Eliza Hart. From the moment I saw your photograph in your background check, I knew. He paused, searching for words. I knew Andrew Calloway had something far more valuable than he realized. Something worth more than any amount he could have stolen. My heart hammered against my ribs. Don't. Don't what? His face was inches from mine now, his voice a low rumble that I felt as much as heard. Don't say things like that. Don't look at me like that. I gripped the chair to stop myself from touching him. I don't even know you. You do, Victor insisted. You've seen me at my most dangerous and at my most vulnerable. You've tended my wounds. You've shared my table. You know more about the real Viktor Sokolov than anyone in this town, perhaps in this country. I know you're a criminal, I whispered. I know you hurt people. Yes. He didn't deny it, didn't try to justify himself. I am what life has made me. But with you, his hand moved to hover near my face, not quite touching. With you, I could be something else as well. The air between us crackled with possibility, with danger, with something that felt terrifyingly like desire. I should have been repulsed, should have been terrified. Instead, I found myself leaning toward him, drawn by a force I couldn't name. A sharp knock shattered the moment. Victor rose to his feet in one fluid motion as the door opened to reveal one of his security team. Sir, we have a situation at the perimeter. Victor's expression hardened into the mask of the businessman, the crime lord. What kind of situation? Police. They're demanding entry with a search warrant. My blood ran cold. Police? Victor's jaw tightened. Someone made a report about a kidnapped bride. I wasn't kidnapped, I protested. I came willingly. The police may see it differently. Victor moved to his desk, pressing a button that revealed a hidden panel in the wall. He withdrew something. A passport. I realized. This has your photograph, but a different name. If you wish to leave now, Dimitri will take you through the tunnel to the boat. You can be in Mexico by morning. I stared at him, stunned. You're letting me go? I told you, Eliza. You were never a prisoner. His voice was resigned, his eyes sad. The choice has always been yours. Stay and face questions about your involvement with me, or leave and start fresh. The passport felt heavy in my hand. A new identity. A way out. Freedom. And if I stay? I asked, my voice barely audible. Victor's expression softened. Then I protect you. From the police, from the Draken Syndicate, from anyone who would harm you. He stepped closer. And perhaps in time, you might see me as something more than the man who disrupted your wedding. Outside, sirens wailed, growing louder. Time was running out. Decide quickly, Eliza, Victor said quietly. For both our sakes. I looked down at the passport in my hand, the weight of it far heavier than its physical presence. A stranger's name beneath my photograph. A fresh start, freedom, and emptiness. With sudden clarity, I handed the passport back to Victor. I'm staying. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked by his usual control. You understand what that means? The questions? The scrutiny? I didn't do anything wrong, I said, straightening my spine. And neither did you. At least not regarding me. I came willingly. I'll tell them that. Something like admiration kindled in Victor's eyes. It won't be pleasant. Neither was being abandoned at the altar. I managed a weak smile. I survived that. I'll survive this too. Victor pressed a button on his desk phone. Dimitri, inform the officers at the gate that Ms. Hart and I will meet with them shortly. He glanced at me. And have Marina bring Ms. Hart's wedding dress to the main foyer. The dress? I asked after he disconnected. Evidence that supports our story, Victor explained, moving toward a concealed door behind a bookshelf. I need to change quickly. A man with blood on his shirt doesn't inspire police confidence. 10 minutes later, I stood in the massive entrance hall wearing yesterday's wedding dress, Victor beside me in an impeccable suit that showed no evidence of his earlier altercation. My heart hammered as the security team opened the main doors, revealing 4 police cars, lights flashing, and several officers with hands hovering near their weapons. Ms. Hart? A female detective stepped forward, her keen eyes assessing me for signs of distress. I'm Detective Reynolds. Are you all right? I'm fine, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. There's been a misunderstanding. Your parents reported you might be held against your will, she said, gaze shifting suspiciously to Victor, after your fiancé abandoned the ceremony yesterday and you left with Mr. Sokolov. Victor's hand came to rest lightly at the small of my back, warm and reassuring. Perhaps we could continue this conversation inside, Detective, away from prying eyes. Detective Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. 2 officers will accompany us. In Victor's study, I explained everything, or a version of it at least. How Andrew had emptied our accounts and sold our apartment without my knowledge. How Victor, as Andrew's employer, had come to warn me but arrived too late. How he'd offered me sanctuary when I had nowhere else to go, my apartment already sold to new owners. You expect me to believe Sokolov arrived with a small army because he was concerned about your welfare? Detective Reynolds asked skeptically. Mr. Sokolov travels with security, I said smoothly, given his position. And what position is that exactly? She asked, turning to Victor. He smiled thinly. I'm a businessman with diverse interests, some of which make me a target for those with fewer scruples. Like Andrew Calloway? The detective pressed. Your employee who allegedly stole from you? Not allegedly, Victor corrected. We've filed reports with the appropriate financial authorities. I'd be happy to provide copies. Detective Reynolds looked unconvinced, but couldn't refute the paper trail Victor had undoubtedly prepared. And you're certain you're here of your own free will, Ms. Hart? No coercion or threats? None, I said firmly. Mr. Sokolov has been nothing but considerate during a difficult time. Her eyes softened slightly. I can imagine. Being left at the altar is traumatic enough without everything else. After another hour of questions, the detective seemed satisfied that, whatever Victor's business dealings might be, I wasn't being held captive. As the police prepared to leave, she handed me her card. Call me if anything changes, she said, her meaning clear. If you need help, I'm here. I nodded, thanking her with genuine gratitude for her concern, if not her suspicions. When the police cars finally disappeared down the winding drive, I sagged against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. That was unpleasant, but necessary. Victor finished, his hand returning to the small of my back. You were remarkable. I looked up at him, really looked, trying to reconcile the dangerous man I knew him to be with the one who had stood beside me, supportive and steady. I told the truth. Mostly. The best kind of deception always is. A small smile played at his lips. Now perhaps you'd like to change out of that dress, unless you've developed a sudden attachment to it. I glanced down at the white lace that now felt like a costume from someone else's life. God, no. Upstairs, I peeled off the wedding dress for the second time, this time with no regrets as I hung it in the closet. After a hot shower, I emerged to find fresh clothes laid out, soft leggings and an oversized sweater that felt like armor against the emotional turbulence of the day. A knock at the door revealed Victor, now in casual clothes himself, dark jeans and a simple button-down that somehow made him look younger, more approachable. "May I come in?" he asked. I nodded, suddenly shy in a way I hadn't been when facing police interrogation. Victor entered, keeping a respectful distance as he moved to the windows where the last rays of sunset painted the ocean in fiery gold. "The police have left the property," he said, "but they'll be watching. And so will others." "The Draken Syndicate?" I guessed. Victor nodded grimly. "Among others. Andrew's betrayal has created ripples." I sank onto the edge of the bed. "What happens now?" "That depends." He turned to face me fully. "You've proven yourself loyal, Eliza. Loyal to a man you barely know, against your own best interests. I didn't do it for you," I said, needing him to understand. "I did it for me. Running feels too much like what Andrew did." Victor's expression softened. "Nonetheless, you've earned both my gratitude and my respect." He hesitated, then added, "And something else I'm reluctant to name so soon after your disappointment." My heart fluttered against my ribs. "Victor, you have options," he continued, as if afraid I'd stop him. "I've had my lawyers prepare documents returning your apartment to your name. Your bank accounts have been replenished with the money Andrew took, plus compensation for your trouble." I stared at him. "You bought back my apartment?" I made the current owners an offer they couldn't refuse. His smile held a hint of danger that, strangely, no longer frightened me. "You can return to your life, teaching, helping at the shelter, caring for your father. Or, I prompted when he fell silent. Victor's eyes held mine, intense and unguarded for once. "Or you could stay. Not as a guest, but as someone important to me. Protected, valued." "As what, exactly?" I asked, needing him to say it. "As whatever you wish to be." He took a careful step closer. "A companion. A partner. Perhaps eventually, more." I rose from the bed, closing the distance between us. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," he said, echoing his words from our earlier conversation. "I know you're brave enough to face the police rather than run, loyal enough to protect someone society would call your enemy, kind enough to tend wounds you didn't cause." His hand rose, hovering near my face without touching. "I know you're the first thing I've wanted for myself in a very long time." The raw honesty in his voice undid me. "I should be terrified of you. Yes. No denial, no justification. I should walk away, take the apartment, the money, and never look back. Also, yes." His eyes never left mine. "So why am I standing here?" I whispered. "Wanting you to touch me." Victor went utterly still. "Eliza." I closed the final distance between us, placing my palm against his chest where his heart beat strong and fast. The world stopped making sense the moment Andrew left me at that altar. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to force it to. His hand finally made contact, fingertips brushing my cheek with such gentleness I might have imagined it. I'm not a good man, by most definitions. I know. And I did know. Had glimpsed the darkness in him, the capacity for violence, the ruthless efficiency with which he navigated his world. "But I would be good to you," he promised, his voice deepening to a rumble I felt in my bones. "Always." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. His other hand came up to frame my face. May I kiss you, Eliza Hart? In answer, I rose on tiptoes and pressed my lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if Victor feared I might shatter. Then something broke between us, a dam of restraint, of propriety, of should-nots and could-nevers. His arms encircled me, pulling me against the hard planes of his body, as the kiss deepened into something hungry and primal. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against mine. Stay with me, he whispered. Not forever, not yet, just stay while we discover what this is. The rational part of me screamed warnings about Stockholm Syndrome, about power imbalances, about falling for the first man who showed strength after betrayal. But another part, deeper and more intuitive, recognized something true in Victor's eyes, in his touch, in the careful way he held me as if I were precious. 1 month, I said finally. I'll stay 1 month. We'll see what happens. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the ocean. 1 month. 1 year later, the cliffside garden blazed with autumn colors, fiery maples, golden cypress, crimson roses making their last stand against the coming winter. I stood at the balustrade where Victor and I had shared our first real conversation, watching whitecaps dance across the steely Pacific. So much had changed in a year. The town now accepted Victor's presence, his generous donations to schools and hospitals, softening his mysterious image. The Dracon Syndicate had retreated after a series of strategic business moves I pretended not to understand in detail. Andrew had been found in Belize, tried for embezzlement, and imprisoned. A lighter sentence than Victor had initially planned, a concession made for my peace of mind. And I had changed too. Still teaching, still volunteering at the shelter, still having Sunday dinners with my parents. But now I returned each night to the cliffside fortress, to Victor's arms, to a life that balanced precariously between normal and extraordinary. Deep thoughts? Victor's voice came from behind me, followed by his arms encircling my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Just remembering, I said, leaning back against his chest. It's been a year today since the wedding that wasn't. Regrets? He asked, a rare vulnerability in his voice. I turned in his arms to face him. The scar on his cheek had faded to a thin silver line, barely visible except in certain light. His eyes, though, remained unchanged. Deep blue, intense, seeing through all my defenses. Not one, I said truthfully, though I could have done without the police interrogation. His laugh rumbled against me, a small price to pay. We stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. 1 month had become 2, then 6, then permanent. My small apartment in town kept as a symbolic independence neither of us took seriously anymore. Victor's hand slipped into his pocket, withdrawing something small that caught the fading sunlight. I have a question for you, he said, suddenly serious. My breath caught as he opened his palm to reveal a ring, not a traditional diamond, but a deep blue sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds, set in platinum. The color reminded me of your eyes the day we met, he said softly. When you stood at that altar, abandoned but unbroken, Victor. He didn't kneel. It wasn't his style. Too much supplication for a man who commanded armies of black SUVs. Instead, he took my hand, his gaze never leaving mine. I'm not asking for the fairy tale you thought you'd have with him, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Our story will never be simple or conventional. There will always be parts of my business you can't know, dangers I will shield you from. I know, I whispered. But I can promise you this, he continued, sliding the ring onto my finger where it fit perfectly. I will never abandon you. I will never betray you. Everything I am, everything I have, is yours, for as long as you'll have me. Tears blurred my vision as I looked down at the sapphire, then back up at the man who had crashed into my wedding and claimed my heart. Is this a proposal, Victor Sokolov? His smile was slow and sure. It's a promise, Eliza Hart. The rest is semantics. I stretched up to kiss him, feeling his arms tighten around me as if he'd never let go, and I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that he never would. The man the world feared as a dangerous crime lord was, to me, the one who had seen me at my most vulnerable and chosen to protect rather than exploit. "Yes," I whispered against his lips. "Whatever you're asking, whatever you're promising, yes." As the last rays of sun gilded the ocean, Victor lifted me into his arms and carried me inside, toward our shared future, complicated, dangerous, unconventional, but ours. Andrew had left me standing alone at an altar, never looking back. Victor had walked into that same church and never stopped looking at me since. Sometimes the ending of one story is just the beginning of a better one.